Hi, this is Stephen Mead. Over the years, I've read hundreds of books and spent thousands of hours developing what I call the bullseye belief system. And I've used that system to develop my own companies, as well as help others learn to be specific, targeted, and focused to get exactly what they want in life. This is the Bullseye Guy podcast. Stephen Mead back again, another Bullseye Guy podcast. Super excited to have somebody that's going to talk to us about music and entertainment, really more than just music, entertainment as a whole, because the industry was already changing. The landscape was changing, everything with digital. There was new types of communication platforms. COVID has sort of changed some of that as well. So we're going to jump right in. Jeremiah, we joked, you're not sitting in San Francisco, but boy, you do look cool. So introduce yourself. Tell us all about you.
I'm not sitting in San Francisco, and I'm not sitting in Martha's Vineyard either. I don't even know if they'll let folks in the island this summer, unfortunately. We'll see how that goes. They've got about 4 hospital beds on the vineyard. So, I'll give you a little background. I grew up in Cambridge, the home of Harvard, MIT, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Patrick Ewing, the original House of Blues. It was the first House of Blues, first of many to open up across the country.
Yeah, Isaac Tegrat.
On the Harvard campus. And, I grew up, I unfortunately didn't go to Harvard, but, I have that little chip on my shoulder coming from Cambridge. I've been trying to overcompensate ever since, but I'm a student of Generation Hip Hop. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, checking out shows at different colleges and universities in this area, and ended up moving to New York in the late 90s, early 2000s, went to New York University, and had a dream of making it in the music industry. And I got an incredible internship working for basically the Facebook of hip hop management called Violator. And Violator managed the careers of Tribe Called Quest, LL Cool J, Missy Elliott, and really they pioneered the business of hip hop management and how to develop their clients across different areas of the Hollywood sort of agency business, music, film, television, commercials, etc. So I got this awesome internship, and that's where my story begun. Within a year of interning at this company, I started a subsidiary of the company with the owner of the firm's younger brother. His name is Michael. The owner of the firm's name was Chris Lighty. And Chris Lighty is like a Steve Jobs-like figure in hip hop. I mean, he really was a pioneer and brought a lot of organization and a very sophisticated sort of vision to hip hop, to the hip hop business. So his younger brother and I, Michael, started a company together to do concerts and tours regionally, really working with DJs and New York-based artists, and that vision to just basically work with artists whose music we loved and figure out what venues and where to put them kind of expanded. If you can remember, in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had things like MapQuest, right?
Yeah.
We had those are some of our best, our favorite apps, MapQuest and some of the early travel sites. But we were very independent with our agency, and we booked our shows regionally, and then it eventually became a national agency, an international agency. And we kind of prospered during this post 9/11 years of globalism. And we ended up doing concerts in places like Dubai, pretty much before anyone did concerts in Dubai, and regions across the Middle East, obviously, Africa, Latin America. And we built this, wonderful boutique agency. And some of our clients include 50 Cent and G Unit. We represented that band from the very beginning of their career. Through the success of his first album that sold over 12 million copies, and toured him all over the world, and worked with Missy Elliott, another incredible superstar. We've done incredible concerts with Missy Elliott. I mean, when you think about, a lot of us are missing show business. We're missing big arena concerts. We're missing these incredible experiences. And Missy Elliott, just thinking about her production as I'm talking to, sometimes 50 people on stage, dancers, and just these incredible casts, and really, hopeful that we can get back to that, those big shows, because they're so exciting for commercial audiences. But work, and over the years I've worked with a fantastic roster of clients, very diverse, acts ranging from superstars to golden era hip hop artists and instrumentalists, Broadway shows, and my background is really in live music. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about live music today.
Yeah, let's go back a little bit though, because it's interesting. As you were growing up, did you want to be a musician or an artist? Because a lot of people I know end up in the music business but wanted to be musicians. It sounds to me like you're just always been entrepreneurial.
Yeah, well, I grew up playing sports, and playing sports, and I went to a progressive high school here in Cambridge. No grading, very round table discussions, that really pushed community and creative thought. So I was very lucky. I've attended that legendary public high school here in Cambridge. Combined with playing sports, I really had a good foundation. But when I got to New York, I wanted to work in the film industry. Actually, I went to film school, and I wanted to make films. But internships will take you in different directions. And I'm actually writing a book right now about internships, American internships across multiple industries. Well, share my own story, but also interview a lot of different folks with different successes. Because your first internship can kind of open up a lot of doors. And I knew the artists that I loved listening to, as a kid, and I had a genuine love for hip hop, but I didn't know what sector of the industry I was going to fall in. That was sort of a combination of luck and fate, I would say.
Did we lose you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry. But through my first internship, I kind of fell in love with concerts and the agency side. Just doing concerts every day and working with people all over the country and all over the world gave me this sense, this sort of like pre-social media feeling that I could exist in multiple places at the same time. And I got that feeling through putting together concerts all over the United States and all over the world. In other words, like I felt that I was always there with them, even though I was home or at my office on my cell phone. And that was a wonderful feeling back then, in the early 2000s, running the agency, using my BlackBerry, and just crushing it, and I never looked back. I left NYU early and never finished school. And I always said, I've been successfully unemployed ever since. So.
So let's talk about that for a minute from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right? Musicians are entrepreneurs in and of themselves. They're supposed to be and need to be their own businessman or businesswoman. With the advent of digital, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but how did you adapt? Because as things started coming on with digital and became social, I want to talk a little bit about how you saw that at the front edge, what you did to adapt, because that's going to lead us somewhat into what the adaptation is going to be in this new normal after COVID. So as digital was coming on, what did you see as kind of the future and how the artists could benefit from it?
That's a tough question. The music industry, I think, as a whole, has been on the decline since the early 2000s. There are technologies that were introduced in the late 90s. Streaming, obviously Napster, and all these different products. And the industry as a whole was really late to accepting it, to adapting to it, and to really partnering with it. The record labels are really late in that game. And as a talent manager, when I would say MySpace was introduced in the early 2000s, and then and later on, Twitter and Facebook, I can remember vividly many memories and experiences of these different technologies, and just questioning. Obviously, MySpace was a tool for artists, right?
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And we benefited from it in many ways. Twitter, I was a little bit, kind of nervous about when Twitter was first introduced, and I would tell, some of my colleagues, I think that we should not just be publishing our thoughts on Twitter every day. Let's just work with publishing companies and put out traditional print books, that our business lessons shouldn't be piecemealed and microdosed to people for free on Twitter, but that we should really step back, publish a book, and then focus on promoting those books, whether it was our clients or executives. I was nervous about Twitter. I felt that it created this instant transparency, and I think even Twitter as this sort of like piece between MySpace. Facebook wasn't really mobile in a way. It was just that transition from Facebook being on your PC or MacBook to mobile was a little bit slower, I think. But Twitter right from the gate made me nervous because people were tweeting and firing tweets off, and a lot of that stuff couldn't be taken back. So
right.
I've always been sort of like I embrace the technology, on one hand, but with the technology comes a lot of responsibility and concern from a PR perspective. And here we are in this mobile universe right now, extremely exciting right now, but also there's plenty of room for failure. So I don't know, like I think that there's the music industry has suffered a lot, from music being devalued, being essentially given away for free through YouTube and through streaming. And the artists, the hip hop artists for the last 35 years, since Will Smith and these guys like LL Cool J, they've always thought about the recording process. It's different with hip hop than with rock, because hip hop artists look at it and say, well, I'm going to tell my story in as many ways as I can tell my story. So making my first album and making and shining in terms of features and music and stuff that's on the radio is a one way to tell my story, but that I'm not limited to that. I will tell my story through film, television, through brand deals, through all these other mediums, social media. So rock and roll is very more singular in that sense. It's more one-dimensional, where you really just want to tell your story through the band and through the live performance.
So let's talk about that, because again, I like these sort of natural transitions, segues, tangents, whatever we want to call it.
Yep.
Storytelling, I think, and you and I have spoken about it, is a big part of the artist. Finding ways to tell better stories. Let's talk a little bit about we're middle April here, towards the end of April. We're in the middle of COVID 2019. Yep. What have you seen changed with what the artists are trying to do now and how they're trying to connect with their fans? And I want to sort of handle it in two stages. One, what things you've seen going on now, what you think's important. And then second, I want to transition to what we think it can be going forward. So what are some of the big changes you've seen with some of the talent now?
Okay. I would say that over the last several years, we've seen hip hop artists, see the value of equity in companies, equity deals, back end, that has naturally started evolved from maybe 20 years ago. In other words, artists in the history of the music industry, artists would be a little bit skeptical about going in and working with a tech company or a major brand and having equity. They'd want to see that money all up front. Starting with the record labels, because the record labels were notorious for not paying royalties and not structuring deals that were artist friendly. So the artists naturally, and even dating back for generations of promoters not paying artists and artists holding their breath to get paid by they felt like they're the last ones to get paid. So, in the last decade, you see folks like Jay-Z or 50 Cent or, different rappers doing, Chameleonaire, all these different artists doing equity deals. And I think that the artists want to be businessmen, and they have savvy managers and accountants and lawyers that are willing to help, or that are partners with them to help structure these deals, so that they can say, well, if I help this company grow and that company is sold during this whole, explosion in the last, decade or so, 2 decades in Silicon Valley, they want to be a part of those kinds of music tech companies. So I think that the market was prime right now as we enter into this COVID thing, where in terms of like the behaviors of artists, the entrepreneurial sort of pursuits of artists, they're all willing to kind of play ball in this digital space. So in order to do that, though, we've got some housekeeping to do, and so everyone is like, what we're seeing right now is basically like the McDonald's All-American, basketball clinic, or the Olympic trials take place in Instagram, and everyone's sort of showing off what they've got, and they're doing it in sort of a fun and natural way. And the folks who we thought would be really out and ahead of it, and nothing against DJ Khaled, because he did wonderful work with Snapchat and all these things that he helped introduce into the market. But DJ Khaled right now is at home, with a beard that's even grayer than mine and even more disheveled. And like he's in the backyard with his wife and his kid Assad, and his Assad is like he's a whole beautiful, like, Prince level, persona in this country. But DJ Khaled took a back seat, and then you see other artists like D Nice, who had this sort of incredible moment the first week during COVID, where he said, I'm going to host these live DJ sets. And it's something that seems so simple. You're in your sunset hour, and at 6-7 o'clock, the sun is setting, and you're drinking a glass of wine, and you set up your equipment in your apartment, and you're DJing. And he had 200,000 followers that first night. The next night he had 2 million. So he gained practically 2 million followers overnight. And all of these celebrities were pouring in terms of like Black culture. It was kind of like a combination of MTV meets BET. And D Nice had this wonderful moment, and he's been doing it every night. And so in sort of the tech world, you think you're going to put your money on these bets, and it's like something comes out of nowhere and catches your attention, surprises you. So D Nice was sort of that outlier. Nobody thought that he would come out in front during this COVID crisis, but he certainly did, and he made a huge story for himself. I mean, D Nice has been in the hip hop world since the late 80s, a 30+ year career. Came up with KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions, and had his own successful solo artist career. But and he's done very well in sort of the LA, Hollywood, New York DJ circuit. But like, he was not a digital artist, so he took a huge leap of faith and went from a sort of nightlife personality, and somebody who had a lot of credibility in sort of the circles of like Puff Daddy and Drake and 50 Cent. All these different artists are of course very familiar with him in the R&B world as well. But he just took a huge dive into the virtual world, and he's been doing really well. And there are a number of different examples. Like, you would think that that Drake, or that another artist like Drake, I don't know, a Rihanna or someone like this, would just crush it right now. But Tory Lanez started something called Quarantine Radio. I mean, it was on fire on Instagram early on, and it was just like, if you picture Nick Cannon's Wild and Out meets a little bit of like an MTV punk thing, and here you have like this 20-year-old kid kind of on college spring break, just having a blast. And it was done, with good humor and good spirit. And I think he broke some of the rules on Instagram, and they cut him off for a day, let him back on. But some of these guys are just having fun. And the thing is, nobody's playing for money right now, so there's a lot of betting, and there's a lot of cards going on. But I don't think that I think the art right now and the creativity is so far in front of the business, at least during month one. And folks are going to start to figure this out in the next month or two in terms of innovation and all the cool home entertainment opportunities. They're just endless right now. But we're all sort of breathing through this oxygen tank of Instagram, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. So with that, Jeremiah, and again, I want to make sure everybody knows how to, get a hold of you, your whole name. I want to talk in a minute how you got your nickname, because your nickname's not up here, so we have to talk about that. But in the theme of where we were, I did one of our podcasts months ago called Social Media is Broken. And you and I have talked about that. There's so many things, even with Instagram. Instagram's done well. I don't, begrudge them any successes, but there's still so many limitations with how the technology could still evolve and really connect the artist and the fan and do it in a seamless way, but also still drive commerce, because that's what I think's been missing is as technology's driven the control down, the artists can now control their own message and their own marketing. And what have you seen with sort of that, where you want to be organic as an artist, but you do have to make money and the fans want to support you? So that's sort of the next step, is closing that chasm between, you know, music, marketing, the message. How do you put all that together?
Yeah, well, we know the platform will change every 10 years, or sometimes every 5, 6, 7, 8 years. The platform's destined to change. And I think everyone is like in this. This feels like 1849 with Instagram. You know, it's like a gold rush, but like, where's the gold, right?
Yeah.
So who's getting rich during the gold rush? Are the folks selling shovels and figuring out what's
Which
next?
is Instagram selling the shovels.
Yeah, maybe you'd be better off selling silver during the gold rush, or making your wealth selling silver. So, you know, everyone is excited about Instagram because we're seeing the world united on a platform. You know, it's almost like MTV created this. You know, they created it. They could have created an Instagram. You know, they were bringing culture and video and images and live content, you know, to the forefront 25 years ago. And I loved how fresh MTV was able to, and how relevant week in and week out MTV made content, right? It was always fresh, new music videos, new artists, new songs, MTV Spring Break, all these cool MTV News. But, you know, things change, and, you know, they changed from television to computers to mobile. And maybe now we'll start to go from mobile back to larger screens and television 10 feet away. So the tennis ball is just bouncing in every different direction. But, you know, I think that Instagram is really hard because you can't live with it. You can't live without it. You know, an artist, you know, there's just all this fear of missing out, or not posting up. But the problem really is that we haven't been able to link business to it, you know?
Yeah.
So when you're an artist or an influencer, and you've got audience and you've got likes, these likes are functioning like V-Bucks, but they're not V-Bucks. You know, last night Travis Scott dropped his new skin on in Fortnite. You know, it's a good $40-$45 purchase, and now they've got these Astro World concerts coming up this week in Fortnite. You know, that's real business. You know, when the product is integrated that quickly and you're just purchasing it instantaneously, like I can't ever, you know, recall a moment where, unless you're talking about a concert, a tour being launched, and then the artist saying, hey, I've got my tour going out, you know, yeah, I guess there's some truth to that. Or some artists will say, I'm dropping my merch, right? So you know, Instagram does remain an important platform to promote a tour, new merch, films. You know, I think that there's still a value there, but you know, it's tricky in terms of how you can monetize your audience day in and day out, because I think that the fans want to spend the money, they just don't know how.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of interesting things, because I've been in the industry a long time. I started e-commerce 96, and I was on a panel at Munich, and I was doing some stuff around music, and everybody's like, oh, people want music to be free. And I said, how many of you use Wikipedia? And almost everybody raised their hand. I said, how many of you have paid for Wikipedia? And about 60% of the audience raised their hand. Even though it's free, you're willing to support something you believe in. Then I talk about likes. What you were talking about, Jeremiah, my joke is a like, right? A click, a like. A like feeds your ego, not your bank account.
Yeah.
Somebody liking your photo is like driving by your restaurant, honking and waving.
Yeah, that's right.
If they don't take an action to buy something, it doesn't do anything.
Right, and it's almost like having stock in something that may not be worth anything one day, right?
Yeah, and the interesting part with the internet too, I tried to do this years ago with MySpace, which you've talked about. We've been around long enough to know MySpace, and my friends ran in, they're like, oh, what would you do? I said, I would treat MySpace like a nightclub. And they go, well, what do you mean? I said, to me, the internet, people like new platforms. Facebook can't just integrate and put Instagram in or Snapchat, because people like going to new things. It's like a nightclub. You own a nightclub, you shut it down, you put a rope up, you reformat and open as something new. The internet's driven by something new, and that's what I think. The digital platforms are just kind of tired. There should be an evolution of what's new, and if the right artist goes to the forefront, I think fans will follow because they want something new and fresh, but they also want a connection.
Yeah.
And so what do you see? You know, we've got 4 or 5 minutes left here. What do you see as the next 6, 9, 12 months coming out of COVID? We're going to have to take into account what I call the new normal, not in a
Yeah.
bad way, but
Yeah.
more virtual
No,
concerts, more touch
I'll
points.
ramble. You know, I think that, you know, some people will go to concerts more than they've ever gone before. Some people won't. I think that concert spaces will need to be really thorough with how, like, all this UV stuff with air conditioners and any machines and devices we can make to create more pure, cleaner air to breathe, cleaner bathrooms, easier processes of walking into venues. You know, so I think that we're thinking about how to make venues safer. You know, in some venues are much bigger, so you can have more social distancing. You know, venues are going to start to think about how they can, you know, they can streamcast, live broadcast more shows. You might start to see more concerts take place at venues without fans. Do you remember how effective MTV Unplugged was? You know, MTV Unplugged could have had a full audience or 50 people. But they figured out that they kind of mastered that magic on stage, right? So I think we'll start to see a lot of innovation. I mean, outdoor concerts, indoor concerts, and you know, there's no cookie cutter way of looking at how things are going to get rolled out in terms of live music, right? So major cities are one challenge. Secondary, tertiary markets, outdoor venues, and festival sites are different. So it's going to be really complicated. But then on the other end, which is what we're working on right now, you know, in terms of, like, you know, virtual experiences, I'm personally thinking about how do you use augmented reality and virtual experiences. Like, you know, we're seeing a lot of regular stuff on Instagram, you know, normal faces, but I'd like to try and figure out how we can kind of use additional augmented reality and video gaming experiences, and to create sort of unique sort of you know, gaming experiences, I would say, for hip hop fans. And you know, I've been playing with 16-bit graphics, you know, this past week or two, just kind of messing around with it, figuring out, you know, how we can, you know, use the voiceovers of different hip hop artists and celebrities and influencers to kind of put people in a different experience. Because I think that people are willing to go into a more sci-fi experience. They're willing to push AI a little harder right now. In other words, like, you know, if we're not getting out the house every day and having social experiences, then we kind of like are in this, we're inevitably going to be in this more sci-fi experience. And so the sci-fi space is going to grow, I think, a lot. I'm excited about those sort of, those few things I just mentioned. You know, we know what's winning right now. We know that you know, Amazon's winning. We know that you know, food service deliveries winning, and pretty much, you know, those kinds of industries. But you know, we'll see what happens. We know that there's a lot of businesses that aren't winning. You know, like Coca-Cola, beer. You know, these kind of things that we've sold a lot of. You know, that people aren't going to events anymore. So I think a few industries are winning, and a lot of industries are kind of like are choking, gasping for air, figuring out what's next.
Yeah, perfect. So let's do this. Wrapping up, Jeremiah, great talking with you. I mean, I've appreciated what you've done for so many years. 2 things. One, let people know, actually 3 things. 1, let people know how to get a hold of you if you're interested in that. 2, tell us how you got your nickname. And 3, is there anything that we can do to help you with what you're working on in this sort of next generation of you?
Okay, so so what was the first question?
Full name, because I
Yeah,
even
Jeremiah
trying to pronounce your last name, I don't even attempt.
Yeah, got it. Jeremiah Yournassi, Ice X Sports on Instagram. The name Ice is a name that I got playing basketball as a kid after George Gerving, the famous San Antonio Spur, who was famous for a finger roll. I grew up, like I said, in Cambridge, the home of Patrick Ewing, you know, a huge basketball city, you know, on the Charles River on the other side of Boston. And this is basketball nation here. We've got a lot of really great basketball history. So everyone was out there dunking from the foul line and doing double pump dunks. And I was the guy like finger rolling, but still making it work. So, you know, the name Ice comes from my high school and elementary school basketball days. But it's, you know, I'm so thankful to have an adult alias. I can't tell you whether I'm at Harvard or I'm like speaking at a conference or something. Everyone wants to know how I got the name Ice. And the second part of that is like, you know, how do you create an adult alias, right? Because I think we all love nicknames. You know, I'm currently working on a book about American internships and you know how you get your foot in the door. It's not just specific to hip hop, but it's going to cover a lot of different sort of industries. And I think it'd be really important for students to come out. You know, we'll see what happens with college next semester and how that's, there are 4,500 colleges and universities, junior colleges in this country. So some I think will roll out next fall and some won't. But you know, I think the following semester and going forward for the next several years, you're going to see a lot of young talent just really itching to make it in America. And so I could have gone in a number of different directions with my book, but I figured that, you know, focusing on business principles and business lessons for young people would be the most, I'd be the most useful at doing that right now in terms of my life and my career. So I'm excited about teaching. I'm excited about writing. I'm excited about consulting on a few different projects for my clients. You know, I really like video gaming. And so I'm just trying to figure out how we can sort of, you know, combine video gaming with hip hop and have some interactive experiences. And, you know, really excited to see what happens with, you know, augmented reality in the next few months.
Good. All right, man. Well, again, I greatly appreciate your time. We'll follow up for sure when the book comes out and find a great way to promote it. So Jeremiah Ice, coming to us from the East Coast, even though he's got the San Francisco in the background. And again, Steve and me, the Bullseye Guy podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, Steven, take care. All the best.
Thanks, Jeremiah. All right, buddy.